is the greatest challenge of your entire journey. Your actions here will determine the fate of the entire world. Don't bother answering. If you haven't gotten it by now, your choices don't matter.
These are lines from Undertale and Deltarune that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. I picked them out for this video because I think that they're loaded Chekhov's guns, showing us what direction Deltarune will take in the future and where our place in the story is. I believe that the implications of these lines have deep symbolic and thematic ramifications for Deltarune. By the way, major spoilers for every chapter of Deltarune.
Coming straight from your house. Coming straight from your house.
And, oh, right. That's us, by the way. At least I'm quite certain it is. Yes, we're going to begin this analysis with the assumption that the soul is us, the player. As I'm sure you're aware, Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 have quite possibly set a new record for how much a game can set a fan base, and the internet by extension, on pure brain rot fueled fire.
Driving in my car right after a beer. Hey, that bomb is shaped like a deer. When you're fooling with the night and you can't survive the fight, cause the shadow mental's might fades too rapidly. I've an engine that still runs, roaring night, I'll get her done with the force and crush your rising star. Don't forget, I'll hit you with my car.
Go to sleep, go to sleep, go sleep, little pet.
Does anybody remember this Undertale character? His name is Togor Dreamer.
With new theories coming out of the woodworks, we're seeing a new canon of post-Chapter 3 and 4 theories ascend out of the darker yet darker depths that is the Undertale Deltarune fanbase. So, I figured I'd finally stop sitting on the sidelines and try my hand at a bit of theorizing / game analysis, which is where this video comes in. The central thesis of which has been floating around in my head for so dang long, and it seems like the general consensus disregards it so hard that I literally can't take it anymore. So, here it is. My theory. The no souls theory. Generally, we theory goblins of the Undertale Deltarune fanbase tend to believe that both of these worlds share the same metaphysical rules, the same concepts, the same ideas. The most popular example of this, which I want to challenge in this video, is the belief that, as in Undertale, monsters and humans have souls. Now, I need to preface that when I say souls in this context, I don't mean the esoteric body-soul dualism idea from Greek philosophy. I mean a capital soul, like the literal heart-shaped object that we control in the game. This distinction between philosophical, shall we say, little soul and literal heart-shaped capital soul seems to me like a clear distinction that Deltarune is trying to draw in the sand. I don't believe that monsters or humans in Deltarune have those capital souls. So to be clear, I mean these things. And these. You know, just so we don't get confused, in this video I'm going to call these things capsules. Now, initially, my claim may seem like a bold one, and so I'd like to hide behind my disclaimer shield. Before we proceed any further, I may be wrong on many parts in this video, as it is my first theory / analysis video. If anyone has any corrections or comments, please do let me know, and I will ban you. I will admit if I have missed some evidence or made a mistake. Okay, disclaimer over. Basically, my goal isn't to try and convince you that I'm 100% correct, but to at least move the dial, and hopefully show that the rules in Deltarune aren't a cut and dry copy-paste from Undertale. Please don't burn me alive in the comments if I'm clearly wrong. Putting that aside, I think that a strong argument, or at least a decent cause for consideration, can be made that in Deltarune, neither monsters nor humans have capsules. If I can't convince you of my argument in this video, then at least acknowledge the evidence I provide and take it into serious consideration, because I believe that it's significant. Even if my claim turns out to be untrue, I think it may still be said that the capsule we are embodied with is guaranteed to be categorically different from any sort of souls that characters in Deltarune may possess. Okay, well, why does this matter to me so much? Well, I'll tell you why. You see, in Undertale, character dialogue and flavor text throughout the world clearly outlines how monsters and humans have capsules, what a capsule's purpose is, how they work, and what happens to them when their host dies. In Deltarune, however, at least to me, a lot of this information seems to be kept so much more vague for apparently no reason, and apparently nobody else is driven insane by that. Now, maybe a lot of players take this silence as a cue from Toby that the rules are the same. But no, not me. I think that the silence is quite intentional and speaking volumes about where Deltarune's story and themes are going to go in future chapters. So to explain why I choose to go against the grain and challenge the hive mind's status quo, let's use some sweet, sweet chapter card transitions. In Undertale, the first character we meet is Flowey, who on first contact exposition dumps to us about what our capsule is within the metaphysics of Undertale. We're told that the soul is the culmination of our being and that we can grow stronger by gaining EXP in love, which we later find out actually translates to becoming a literal psychopath. Andrew Cunningham's video on Undertale explains how our journey through the game makes our suspension of disbelief a diegetic mechanic pretty thoroughly, so just go check it out in the very unlikely event that you of all people haven't seen it. Of course, given that the main demographic of people watching this video are probably just as far down the rabbit hole as I am, you've probably already seen that video 4 times, just like me. Anyway, putting aside your YouTube habits, the becoming of a psychotic killer in a game by engaging with it through the lens of existing in a high reality and how that disconnection can lead us to doing incredibly cool things that we never would have done in a place we believe has actual consequences. Undertale also tells us about one more slightly pertinent property of capsules. That being this property of capsules has been so nebulous, so polarizing, and so infamous that the fan base was sent into an actual spiral of depressive insanity when Queen name-dropped it in Chapter 2 like everyone just found out that their ex pulled up to the party unannounced and that she's got a new boyfriend who's way hotter. So, what is this determination stuff? Well, at least in Undertale, determination is a power that the player, as well as apparently every character in the game, possesses to some degree. We, as the player, possess the most determination in the game, and so as such, we wield the power to save and load the game. Diegetically, this functions as our save and reset abilities, and at the end of the True Pacifist run, this morphs into the ability to save little crying goat boys. How those two things relate can be unclear at first, but that's actually really important, so hold on to that thought. Also, just go watch Andrew's video about post-Chapter 2 determination brain rot if you somehow haven't. So, everything we know about determination from Undertale, throw it out, baby, because in Deltarune, determination is apparently completely unrelated to capsules, saving, loading, and little goat boys. In Deltarune, determination is now the power Lightners need to channel in order to create dark fountains. In the words of Susie, concentrate on what I want, and diagonal Chris. Determination is seemingly utterly irrelevant to saving and loading in Deltarune. We can see this by comparing how save points in Undertale would always mention that the player was filled with determination. Save points in Deltarune, however, now state that the player is filled by various powers, enigmatic as some of those powers may be. This theme of the player being filled with quote-unquote power or shining with power is laid on thick in Chapter 4, where we literally need to nuke the Titan with our light powers from inside. But besides that, each time we've sealed a fountain in a chapter, it's been our soul using a mysterious power to shine in the dark. It seems pretty clear after Chapter 4 that this ability really is limited to our capsule, considering that it's the only interpretation that makes sense out of what Carol says on the phone to Chris in Chapter 4. And yes, I think that the caller is Carol. In being the power that needs to be channeled to create dark fountains, determination also seems to be thematically linked with the creation of fiction, exemplified by the Dark Worlds, which according to Rousey are formed when the world goes darker than dark, and when the real world becomes indistinct. Now, as for what that actually means, I think I want to make a whole separate video talking about Deltarune's use of darkness symbolism, but put that aside for now. What's important to remember right now is that the use of determination creates dark worlds, ergo fiction. That is to say, determination creates stories. Or is it more correct to say that determination follows the story? As in prophecy. I'm not entirely sure right now, but that seems like a promising line of thought. Now, I'm sure most of you know, but if you don't, a large part of the fan base likes to find silly double meanings in the term Tricky Tony chooses to use in his games. For instance, lots of people think that determination doesn't just mean the will to overcome hardship, but determination. Like undying. Wait a minute. Or determination as in determinism, which for the uninitiated is the philosophical idea that everything is predetermined, as in everything you do in the future is already set in stone and cannot be changed. Your behavior is directly decided by the chain of causation that led you where you are now. Basically, you're just a bunch of atoms that got bumped in a certain direction. Almost like the world is utterly chaotic, only giving the impression of having order. Might sound a little far-fetched to some, but there are interesting arguments in support of determinism in like our actual world. Not that I personally believe that they're good arguments, but getting back to how determinism can relate to both Undertale and Deltarune, I mean, isn't that literally part of the core themes of both games? Your choices matter versus your choices don't matter. The fate of the world's in your hands versus you're at the mercy of a little 14-year-old who can hit you with a hockey stick. I think that it makes a whole lot of sense for determination to share a deep thematic link with determinism. And I think that both of these games are trying to position the player in a way that sets us against accepting a deterministic outlook when we interact with these worlds. Who decides the fate of the underground? Who can choose whether or not to manipulate, traumatize, and mentally destroy a young girl who thinks she's following a friend she can trust? It's us. We're deciding what the fiction is. In effect, we're determining it. So, the power to open fountains, unleashing darkness and chaos, the set path that the prophecy in the world is doomed to follow, determination. In seemingly the opposite corner, the power to seal fountains, the white pen of hope, the power that shines within. These two forces are clearly supposed to be direct foils to one another, yet this time around, determination isn't our power. It's the power we're trying to fight. Why is that? Why is becoming a glorified glow stick our special ability now? Hey, who turned the lights off? In order to discuss why our power in Deltarune is so unapologetically connected to light, and why the story has been beating us down with the subliminal messaging that our choices don't matter, we need to talk about Undertale again. Expanding on what was said before, in Undertale, the player uses their power of determination to do three things: save and reset the game, cheat death, and decide the fate of the world, aka choose your own story. Taking this into consideration, how would you expect the true final boss of the game to be defeated? For the player to burn all their attack patterns into their muscle memory and use their unlimited lives to win? To return to an older save file and make different choices? Maybe they would simply will the story to end, shut the game off, and be a real big shot. Winner. Well, the truth is that none of those powers are what we use to defeat Asriel. In fact, Asriel hopes that we continue using our powers so that the game can be locked in an infinite stalemate. As we continuously refuse to die or refuse, he wants to play with us forever. He never wants the story to end. He wants everyone to stay in darkness so that the only light in his world doesn't leave. So what can the player do besides hope and dream? Struggle as they might, it all seems pointless. Asriel will keep killing them and they'll just come right back. Returning to an old save is pointless. The world will inevitably return to this point and the cycle will continue.
You tried to reach your save file. Nothing happened. You tried again to reach your save file. Nothing happened. Seems saving the game really is impossible. But maybe with what little power you have, you can save something else.
Not his theme, dude. I'm actually gonna cry. What did you do? What's this feeling? It's happening to me. No, I don't need anyone. Stop it! Get away from me! Do you hear me? I'll tear you apart. Matsu, do you know why I'm doing this? Why I keep fighting to keep you around? Save. I'm doing this because you're special, Matsu. You're the only one that understands me. You're the only one who's any fun to play with anymore. No. That's not just it. I'm doing this because I care about you, Matsu. I care about you more than anybody else. I'm not ready for this to end. I'm not ready for you to leave. I'm not ready to say goodbye to someone like you again. So please, stop doing this and just let me win. Stop it. Stop it now. I'm so alone, Matsu. So afraid, Matsu. Matsu, Asriel's afraid of it.
In the end, it's not determination that saves the world, but hopes and dreams, which is what faith is, really, in a beautiful sequence of loving acts. Saving Asriel from the darkness he was seeped in. This is what allows the barrier to be shattered and for the underground to have light once more. As a flower, Asriel had come to accept what was in essence a deterministic worldview. Kill or be killed. Sets of numbers, lines of dialogue. He's seen them all, as he says. He seeks liberation from the determined world he's found himself in, and that's what our love for him did. Love didn't just shatter the barrier between the underground and the surface, but it also shattered the barrier between us and Asriel. Darkness was shattered by light. Death was conquered by love. Despair was overwhelmed by hopes and dreams. Now I can already hear you saying, "But man, Asriel said that when Ethri wins determination, he'd set everyone free. So therefore, monsters need to have souls to have to..." Shut! You see, that would be relevant in this discussion if determination was linked to capsules and Deltarune. But we already went at length talking about how Deltarune has cut the tie between determination and capsules. The monsters in Deltarune do not need capsules to possess determination, so this is a moot point. Even if we wanted to speculate and say that monsters in Deltarune need some kind of quote-unquote soul to be able to harness determination, or some kind of determination gland, it wouldn't be the same kind of thing as our capsule. Now, if in a future chapter we end up being the ones to open a fountain, this entire theory and analysis gets thrown out the window, I think. That would be fair to say. But I highly doubt that would ever happen. I think that our power is too clearly being established as an oppositional force to determination, which is linked with darkness and chaos. Switching gears back to Deltarune, I think that quite obviously this symbolic thread of light-bringing power has carried over with us from the true pacifist ending. I don't know if this means that the capsule has literally evolved from a determination type to a light type, but we certainly don't wield determination anymore, whether that's by choice or a consequence of connecting to Deltarune's world via Gaster's device. Could also just be Tricky Tony nerfing us for the sake of the story, who knows at this point. Either way, I think that as in Undertale's symbolic narrative, determination or determinism will be the force that we, the player, oppose with hopes and dreams and love in Deltarune. Quick side note during editing, I think that the angel probably does personify this whole theme of determinism. Anyway, back to the video. Lord of the Hammer, which is a series of books that Gerson wrote in Deltarune, is based on an interpretation of a dream that he had. A dream of the Deltarune prophecy. It's also a clear nod to the real-life series Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Both series are written by authors who held religious convictions. Both are stories that retell or reinterpret the story of the world their audience lives in through allegory and symbolism. Both authors also believe that in the end, evil will be overcome by good, and that the only true power heroes possess is hope. In Lord of the Rings, characters like Boromir try to force the story in a certain direction, yet he fails and causes the splitting of the Fellowship, whereas the characters who hold on to hope, compassion, and love, like Frodo and Sam, are the ones who succeed in inadvertently destroying the Ring of Power. This is because they chose to spare Gollum, who by most metrics really doesn't deserve any mercy, yet because Frodo decides to spare Gollum, the ring meets its end beneath the fires it was forged in. Wait a minute. The ring? The ring. The ring. What route in Deltarune allows the player to feel like they're taking the story into their own hands? What route does the player need to be determined to follow in order to properly enact it? Which route of the game does the ring come from? The thorn ring. Maybe the reason the player needs Noelle so badly is because we need her determination. It's like our capsule has been stripped of its rightful power and we can't stand it. Maybe this thing growing in Noelle is a new capsule just for us. Finally, we can be reunited with our greatest power, the ability to shape fate. I think that with this understanding in hand, we can predict that in the weird route, we're preparing to make full use of Noelle's power. We will be in control once again, and when we are,
I will become the god of this new world.
We will bring about our heaven through our little angel puppet, just as she was always destined to be. Sorry if I'm diving a little off the deep end here, but this seems to me like the only logical conclusion based on the main thesis. And so far I've only talked about the symbolic argument against monsters and humans having capsules. I'm guessing that most of you at this point probably want some textual evidence, so let's get into it. The title of this section may seem a bit strange and out of left field, but trust me, it'll be important later. For now, I want to compile all the dialogue and flavor text in support of my argument, and afterwards I'll dive into all the counter-arguments people are bound to make. First, I want to talk about how in comparison to Undertale, Deltarune seems to keep information about capsules far more vague. text in the light world never outright states that monsters and humans have capsules, as in Undertale. There are just too many moments in Deltarune where characters act so unaware as to what souls are, it bothers me. If there's so much inconsistency, it actually hurts my head. Practically every major scene in Undertale has the cast talking about monster souls this, the human souls that. Yet in Deltarune, all the terms and language around souls is so much more veiled. It's to the point where it seems like most characters don't even know what souls are. The Labrarbe books do mention them, but they don't even know what capsules do. The little that's written about them is only consistent with what Rousey explains to us in Chapter 1. Compare this book to the flavor text in Undertale, it's so much more vague and just weird. Man, I can't be the only one thinking this is odd. Jumping to the study day, Noelle tells us a story of how Chris would rip out their heart and chase her with it. Notice she said heart, not soul, as if she had no idea that human souls are shaped like hearts. She also calls Carol's pillows heart-shaped objects, which upon later inspection notes that, depending on your opinion, could be heart-shaped or human soul-shaped. Depending on your opinion. Now, could this be saying your in a more third-person way as opposed to meaning the player's opinion? Sure. Why say your? You could say one's opinion. Am I the only one getting the vibe that this game is aggressively lampshading that the player is the only one who knows what a human capsule looks like? Like, apparently Susie doesn't know what a human soul looks like either. Having just defeated the Titan via Soul Nuke in Chapter 4, Susie asks Chris what the deal is with the red heart thing. Now, granted, her follow-up question definitely gives off the vibe that she's about to ask Chris if it's their soul, but she never gets to finish the question. Could this be because Toby doesn't want to expose our involvement to the characters diegetically yet? Maybe. Could it instead be because Susie wasn't going to ask if it was a soul? Who knows? Seeing that Susie had just read about Chris being the first hero with human soul in parts, she could very well be asking Chris if it's their soul. And you know what? If that is the case, consider this formulation of the theory taken out back and shot, or at least gravely wounded. It could also be that human and monster capsules do exist in Deltarune, like in Undertale, but the characters only know what monster souls look like. Though, seriously, are there no books that describe human capsules? No pictures? Nothing? In Undertale, they at least had a basic understanding of what capsules were and how they work. But you're telling me that in Deltarune, nobody has done any research on capsules? No, wait, seriously. You know what else bothers me? The subtle differences between funeral and burial rites between the two games. In Undertale, the book on monster funerals clearly states that a monster's essence will live on in the object that the dust was scattered on. In Deltarune, the book on funerals states that, and I quote, their lowercase soul will be able to rest within that object and the earth, end quote. Does this mean that their capsule is literally buried under dirt? Hardly. I think this is clearly speaking of a more esoteric soul, not a capsule. So then why is there a distinction between little soul and capsule in this book? If the rules carry over from Undertale, how can a dead monster's soul rest after they die? Why isn't it their essence living on? Oh yeah, and in Deltarune, falling down is never mentioned in these books. In Undertale, we're told in the books and in the True Lab that monsters fall down before death, which seems to resemble a comatose state. Alphys used monsters who were falling down in Undertale to perform the determination experiments, because she had easier access to the monster capsules that way, and she wouldn't risk destroying the capsule's host. So why is this critical detail dropped from the lore in Deltarune so far? Well, I think it has to do with the composition of monsters in Deltarune. I think this is controversial, but honestly, I think that the Susie hybrid theory is really bad. Like, just really, really bad. I can't go into it right now, but basically, I just think it makes no sense to introduce that kind of thematic element to a character this late into the game. It's so uncharacteristically rug pulley and out of left field that I refuse to believe it could be true. Tricky Tony can be a troll, sure, but I think it would be quite a weird route to go down if you decide to make this a plot point halfway through the game. I think that what Chapter 4 is confirmed with Susie's bleeding is simply a suspicion that we've had for a long time. Namely, that magic doesn't exist in the light world, at least not in the same way as in Undertale. So why does Susie bleed? Simple. Monsters are biological. Well, if magic doesn't exist in the light world, what are monsters made of? Why do they turn to dust? Who is this little rabbit, and why has he asked Chris how it feels to be made of blood? Huh? You know, those are all good questions and fair challenges to my claim, but here's my counter. If monsters are just made of quote-unquote magic, like in Undertale, and they don't operate on biological principles at their core, then why does this little rabbit ask where skeletons come from? Why? If monsters can just exist by justification of magic, why does this kid question where skeletons come from? Like, honestly, it's a valid question on his part because as far as I know, no monster in the light world besides Sans is any kind of undead creature, at least a creature that doesn't look like it should have biological operations. Generally, we're able to assign some sort of animal analog to each monster we encounter in the light world. Sans and maybe Papyrus are the only ones who aren't based on animal analogs. We don't see fire monsters like in Undertale. Oh. Well then. Dang, I don't know anymore, dude. I mean, she does order firewood to eat, so like she could maybe be some sort of monster. It's just biology means she's on fire, potentially. Okay, regardless, this kid's questions are weird, man. Like, if we have precedent for literal fire monsters, why are living skeletons a stretch? Like, is it just safe to say we can disregard anything this iPad kid says? Like, people who defend the Susie being half-human theory will always turn to this kid as if he's the authority on the subject of humans being the only creatures who can bleed, but he doesn't even think skeletons can just exist. Like, why is this listed as good evidence? At the very least, he says very obviously contradictory things. Why couldn't he just be wrong in thinking that only humans bleed? So, to those who say only humans are made of blood, I counter, where do skeletons come from? Balls in your court. Moving on from Rabbit Kid, something interesting to note is that no named character besides Rousey directly names the player capsule as a soul. In fact, he's the only one besides Carol to directly address us in the game's dialogue, besides Wingaster, obviously. Spamton refers to the player's capsule as Chris's heart-shaped object, not their soul. If what the Labrarbe book says is true, then Spamton should be able to use Chris's actual human soul or Susie's monster soul to gain his freedom, since the book says that all capsules are the source of one's will. Interestingly, the book omits what Rousey says about the player's capsule also holding the fate of the world. So potentially Rousey could have just been trying to be optimistic or bend the prophecy a little to sound less depressing. Or the ability to control fate is a unique power that we have, and thus why Spamton specifically needed our capsule. In either case, it proves that the kind of capsule we have is categorically different from any kind of capsule Chris or Susie would have. So to wrap up this video that's been going on for long enough, I figure I'll address some of the counter arguments I'm expecting to come my way. I think they'll probably mention something along the lines of these points. Number 1. Souls are mentioned in the library books. How would the Light World authors know about them if they didn't exist? I think that the books could easily be speaking of souls in the esoteric sense, given that the funeral rite books probably use the term soul in just such a way, since if we want to go by Undertale rules, monster souls can't persist after death. Generally, unless someone arguing this point would want to argue that monster souls in Deltarune do persist after death, I guess. Number 2. The cage with human soul and parts. This part of the prophecy calls what is presumably our capsule a human soul, and while I admit that's very specific language in the context of my theory, it could mean that the prophecy has meta-knowledge of Undertale as we do, and so uses the Undertale terminology for a heart-shaped object within a human, not necessarily implying that the capsule in Chris is literally theirs. If we operate under a reworked theory that the player capsule is simply a categorically unique being from any potential human or monster souls in Deltarune, then this text is totally unproblematic. Number 3. How does it feel to be made of blood/bones? Again, this child just doesn't seem reliable as a source of information. He asks Chris if being made of blood hurts, as if that's a unique property of humans. Then Susie, who makes remarks about everyone bleeding by the way, bleeds in chapter 4, and the only conclusion people can come to reconcile this is the Susie hybrid theory. It just seems like a leap to me when we can also see this kid questions the origins of skeletons, despite other seemingly biologically impossible monsters also existing. I just don't think he's a reliable source, guys. Quick editor's note here, but if we assume that Sans actually hails from Deltarune and not Undertale, him bleeding in Undertale actually confirms my theory that monsters in Deltarune are biological and not magical, which then only further demonstrates that this kid is not a credible source to look to. Number 4, the second hero could be Noelle. Getting back to the more thematic and symbolic portions of my argument, part of it could potentially fall flat if we want to say that the second hero with hope crossed in her heart is actually Noelle. Going just by the mural, I don't think we can say definitively who it is. I see the Susie silhouette, and I see the robe. I just think that thematically it makes way more sense for the second hero to be Susie, going by the end of chapter 4. Number 5, the player could possess determination and we just don't know it. This could be very likely, and I kind of hate it. I just think that currently the story seems very determined to say the opposite about the player capsule from a thematic perspective, but I don't know. If that does turn out to be true, then I guess we can consider this theory very, very wounded. Number 6, soul/soul metaphysics could just be the same in Deltarune, but Toby's being coy for no reason. Like, maybe I just think that's a cop-out and lame. Number 7. The bloodstain in Chris's room shows how Monsters, or at least the Dreamer family, doesn't know how to clean it because they've never had to clean a bloodstain before. Yet Susie does because she's half human, bro, trust! Listen, there are so many assumptions that are made in this argument and I can't stand it, dude. Like, firstly, we don't know where the giant bloodstain came from. Judging by its proximity to the cage, is it really that safe to assume that it's Chris's blood? Secondly, we don't know if Chris intentionally kept it around. Thirdly, considering how neglected Chris's side of the room is, it could just be that the Dreamers never cared enough to clean it up. It's only when Susie shows up and pays attention to Chris's side of the room that it gets cleaned up. Woo! Okay. I think that's about every counter argument I can think of. If you guys in the comments have more, please do let me know and I can see what you guys think. I do hope you enjoyed my first theory/analysis video. If it's in high enough demand, I will do a part 2, probably focus more on diving into the symbolism of Deltarune or something like that. This is my first time scripting out a video, so I hope it was tolerable. I'm not used to doing like voiceover at all. Anyway, I'm gonna go now. Love God, love others. Goodbye!